Oklahoma City will host tennis legends John McEnroe, Yvonne Lindell, Michael Chang, and the fellow sitting next to me, Jim Courier, at the Champions Cup that we played Thursday, February 6th in 2014. It's almost here. That'll be 7 p.m. that night at Chesapeake Energy Arena. Now, the Champions Cup is a 12-city tour of one-night tournaments during February and March. Each event features 2 one-set semifinal matches followed by a one-set championship match. I'll shut up and get to the man of the hour here, Jim Courier. Sir, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Great to be with you.
Thanks so much for stopping by. We were talking before the cameras went live here. I've grown up watching you your whole career. You've grown up playing tennis. Why are you still involved in the sport?
Oh, I love tennis. I'm involved in sport in a lot of different capacities. I love to be able to play on the Power Share Series, get a chance to remain competitive, try and beat the you-know-what out of my peers. And some of the young bucks we have playing on this tour this year too, guys like Andy Roddick and James Blake are joining. So that's going to be a challenge for guys like me and Michael Chang and Mac and Lindell and Agassi and Sampras and all the guys we have playing on the tour. But I also get to do a little bit of what you do here. I get to do some commentary at the 4 majors, which I enjoy. I'm our Davis Cup captain, so I'm involved on a lot of different platforms, which keeps me busy, keeps me happy, and keeps me challenged. I like it.
And keeps you on the road. And of course, you've grown up on the road, traveling all the time, and you're in town right now promoting this series. And you mentioned this is a little bit more of a compacted travel series, but walk us through what Jim Courier is involved in right now.
Well, I've been on the road this week. This is my 4th city in 4 days, and I must say, stayed in 4 different hotels. A little disappointed. I won't be revisiting the hotel I stayed in last night when we come back for the tour stop here, February 6th. But this is just a chance to come out, tell the story of what the Power Share Series is, because not a lot of people understand what a one-night tennis tournament looks like. It starts at 7 o'clock. It finishes in about 2.5 hours, so it's basically the same time commitment for people as a basketball game, and it's fun for the fans. It's competition for us, and for me, it's a chance to come and play in a city like Oklahoma City, where I've actually never competed here.
Really?
I was here as a coach for the Davis Cup team in 2002, so this will be the first time I've been on the court playing. I'm looking forward to that.
You're the Davis Cup captain, named the captain in 2010. How's the team look and moving forward?
Team's good. Team's good. The week before I come here, we play our first round against Great Britain, and that's going to be played, believe it or not, in the outfield of the San Diego Padres baseball park, Petco Park.
Kind of cool.
It's going to be really cool. We're building a red clay court because that's not the Brits' favored surface, and we get to choose the surface and the site, and we're going to build it out in the left field and build some stands on the outfield around it. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be really interesting, and that's going to obviously be a challenge to take on Andy Murray. Our top players right now, John Isner, he's 6'10", ranked 14 in the world. He's beaten a lot of great players.
Massive serve, not afraid to go 5 sets.
Not afraid to go long. No, he's not afraid to go long. We have the Bryan brothers, which are the great Davis Cup and Grand Slam champions, the all-time doubles team leaders in major titles. So Sam Querrey is our other singles player. So. We have a good team, and I like staying involved with the young guys too. It keeps me connected to the current tour, which is really fun and good, and hopefully I can impart a little bit of my experience to them and help them play a little bit better during those Davis Cup weeks.
Let's talk about the state of tennis. How are things?
Well, internationally, tennis has never been more powerful or popular. When you have stars like Serena Williams, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, Maria Sharapova, these are icons around the world. Maybe not as much in America because only one of them is an American, but at the game, at the attendance level globally and at the U.S. Open, bigger than it's ever been by a wide margin. The amount of money pouring into the sport, huge. What we're lacking, from my eyes and probably yours, is depth in the American field. We'd love to see some male Americans winning Grand Slams like we've become long accustomed to, going back to Arthur Ashe and Stan Smith and these guys. And we're going to see some depth here in the women's game. We have a couple of really great young stars in the making. Sloane Stephens, who was a semifinalist in Australia last year, beat Serena Williams there. And then Madison Keys, who's another even younger player who's got a lot of power and is a real promising prospect.
I don't think I've seen Madison play yet. That'll be interesting to check out.
Check her out.
We're seeing some signs of parents perhaps not encouraging their kids to play football, NFL, just because of concussions. It's an impact sport. Are you seeing in the sport of tennis any benefit of that, or maybe there's trending towards?
It's interesting. I haven't made any correlation to perhaps people steering away from Pop Warner football or whatever the youth football leagues and pushing into tennis. But at the grassroots level, tennis has more people playing right now than we've ever had since they started tracking it. The 10 and under tennis, which is like a little league version of tennis with smaller rackets, lighter rackets, Nerf balls when you just get started, and other types of softballs, smaller courts, all of that is making a big impact in the growth of the game at that level. And you grow the base, eventually you're going to get some players that are going to migrate to the top, and we're going to have a power center again, which we had about 10, 15 years ago. So I'm excited about that. I certainly don't want us to benefit at the expense of another sport, but it's my dad played high school football. He was a quarterback. He wouldn't let me play football. So that's probably why I played tennis and baseball and stayed in tennis.
Let's go to the social media aspect. We asked a few people, hey, Jim Courier is coming in. What would you ask Jim if you had a chance? Chris Hewitt asked the following questions. What can cities like Oklahoma City do to better promote playing tennis?
Well, I think it all boils down to you need some great local pros who are your Pied Pipers. You really need people who are getting the kids and getting the adults excited about the sport on a daily basis, because word of mouth is always going to be your biggest strength tennis-wise. I think events like this Champions Cup at the peak, I think they can also pique interest in the sport, and maybe a family brings their kids out and says, hey, these are guys that I grew up watching play, and this is a cool sport. See the energy, see the fans, see what these guys are doing on the court, and maybe that can spur some interest as well. But overall, I think you just need to have, at the grassroots level, some really strong leadership there and some people who are so passionate about it that it becomes infectious.
Gotcha. We're talking with Jim Courier, who's in town for an upcoming tennis tournament. Another question was, Jim, how would the legends of your time, and I know you get this question all the time, stack up with today's stars, all things being equal?
Well, I think if you look at guys like Pete Sampras, who was my major protagonist in my career, he was the guy that I had the most difficulty with. I would put him up against anybody at any time because his serve is such a weapon and he can stay in matches with guys. Is he as complete a player as Roger Federer? No, he's not, but his serve would keep him alive and he's a fierce competitor. I would argue that guys like Rod Laver, guys like Mac, while their games right now are very different because of the technology that the current players play with, they were winners. And winners win, and they find ways to be. They're the best of their era, which is all you can really compare them to. We know that the game changes. We know the players get faster in all sports. They get bigger, they get stronger, the speeds adjust. But ultimately what tennis is very similar to boxing, but without the blood and the bruising. It's a one-on-one sport. What I do affects you, what you do affects me, and I just have to be better than you today. So we look at the guys playing. I do, and I say these are the best players I've ever seen play tennis for sure. But I don't know where we would stack up if we were given the same equipment and started at the same time as them. I suspect that the top players would have still found their way to the top.
You are a fantastic clay court player, probably still are. You versus Rafa in your prime.
Oh, that's the one match that I would love to play.
Yep.
Sometimes people say, okay, one match against any player in any time in the history of the sport, who would you want? I'd want Rafa because he is indisputably the best clay court player. I'd love to see how bad he'd bludgeon me because he is so tough. He's such a great competitor. I've never seen anyone compete so fiercely, point in and point out. But I would go out there and play my game and try and take it to him and see how I'd stack up. But I love the way he plays. I love the way he approaches the sport. I have so much respect for him. I'd love to just see how I stacked up.
Very physical player, too.
Oh,
we'll see if those injuries... he came back this year, though.
Ooh, a huge comeback from, he was out of the tour for about 8 months with a knee injury, and he came back and just ran away with the world #1 ranking, even missing the Australian Open. Awesome.
Hey, I was at the Skirvin Hilton last night where the Lakers were in town. They're playing the Thunder tonight. But are you going to the game tonight? Are you sticking around that long?
Unfortunately, my wife has said 4 nights away is enough. Get on home, yeah.
Okay, well, I was at the Skirvin Hilton. That's where the Lakers were at. And by the way, not the hotel that Jim mentioned earlier.
No. That one has the haunted floor, right? I heard about that.
Allegedly has the haunted floor.
That's where I want to stay. I want to try that out and see what that 10th floor is like. So what was happening there in the lounge last night?
Well,
besides you playing music?
I was playing some music, and I'm looking at the Laker coach, Mike D'Antoni, over there with his staff. They're going over paperwork, and I'm assuming, game plans. How do we stop Westbrook or Durant or whatever? And I see the players milling around, and I'm thinking ahead to this interview with you this morning thinking, tell me about life on the road for an athlete. And For you, how do you stay fit when you're on the road?
Well, staying fit on the road is pretty easy because you're competing when you're on the road and you're training all the time. The only tricky part about being on the road is finding restaurants that fit your dietary needs. And when we travel internationally like tennis players do, sometimes that's challenging. You know, if you're an American player who likes to have, let's say, like John McEnroe, before he plays every match, he has a turkey sandwich.
Really?
That's his thing. And he wants it, he needs it, it's a request beforehand. We'll have him here in the peak for him. But when you go play, let's say in France, or you go play in Asia, the turkey's just different, the bread can be different, and sandwiches aren't common over there. People eat, continentally, typically in Europe. So that was a bit of a challenge for me. Now cuisine has changed a little bit, but as far as working out goes, all the equipment's everywhere you need to be, and you are working out. It's not that hard. Jet lag can be a challenge for sure. That never ceases to bother me. But everyone's in the same boat with you. That's the good news. So you just deal with it. I don't know how these guys on the NBA though, when they have to play these games over and over, and they're flying after the game and getting home at 4 a.m. That would put me out of whack for sure. That's challenging.
Looking ahead to the Australia Open, who should we look for this year?
Well, Australian Open is going to be interesting because Rafa is going to be playing again this year. He was gone last year. So a couple big storylines will be, will Rafa continue his dominance? Djokovic has won there the last 3 years running, so he's the hot hand at that particular court. But the thing in the men's game that I'm most curious about right now is where Roger Federer's at, because he had an off year this year by his incredibly lofty standards. He's been tinkering with a racket change. He did it. He played a couple tournaments this summer.
How big is that? Because
huge.
Rackets and strings is your forte.
It is huge for him because he plays with a newer version of the same racket that Pete Sampras, Stefan Edberg, and I played with, the Wilson Pro Staff. This is a small racket. It's basically like a pop gun compared to a machine gun, which is what Nadal and Djokovic and Murray, these guys are playing with, really powerful rackets that have bigger sweet spots too. They're bigger headed rackets. So him changing is I think, acknowledgement that he has to catch up with the times. So I'll be curious to see whether he goes back to his old faithful, Excalibur, or if he comes with a new racket to Australia and where his game is, because he certainly he'd like to improve upon last year's results, or this year's results, I should say.
You're with the 7 Network. Walk us through what you'll be doing during the Australian Open.
So I'm the lead analyst for the men's side of things at the 7 Network. So that's the host broadcaster there, effectively at NBC or an ABC down in Australia, and we cover 14 days of the tennis. So I'll be calling a match in the afternoon, and I'll be calling a match every evening in prime time with my partner down there. And one thing that's a little bit of a wrinkle, in most of these tennis broadcasts, the broadcasting booth is up high. Down here, we're actually right on the court level. So they asked me to go out and interview the winner of the matches afterwards, which I've been doing now for a decade for them, and it was really awkward and challenging for me at first. And I've become used to it now, and it's something that the fans seem to be okay with. But I have to do your job, and your job is way harder than my job. Answering questions is way easier than asking them, because you have to, you're sitting here thinking about your next question while I'm just blabbing away mindlessly. So it's it's a little trickier, but I like the challenge. I think it's a nice mix to being in there with the cans on, talking about what I'm seeing.
We're chatting with Jim Courier here. Jim, I have 2 questions left for you. One, perhaps an open-ended question, but what do you wish people would ask you about tennis, or what should people know about tennis that they typically don't know?
Well, if I had sort of one wish for the American sports audience, I think it would be for them to be a little bit more open-minded about the international players, and maybe not be quite so patriotic and jingoistic about, if they're not American, I don't care. Because Roger Federer is one of this generation, and I think any generation's great iconic athletes. I mean, for me, he's in the pantheon with Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Michael Schumacher, who's a great Formula One driver that most Americans don't know as well. But these are the guys that really lifted the bar of their sports, and also did it with a lot of dignity and class too. So I wish that our fans, I get the question, and it's obviously a real question. What's wrong with American tennis? It's fair. yeah, we're not where we'd like to be, but when you have someone like Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal that have just, basically dominated the sport, I don't care where you're from, you're not breaking through and beating those guys unless you're really exceptional. And that's what Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray have had to work for, and they finally got there.
Jim, where's your game at? How's this going to go down? Give us your estimate of February 6th, the Champions Cup at the Chesapeake Energy Arena. He'll be competing against Lindell, McEnroe, Chang.
Yeah. What's going to happen? All right. If I have my little crystal ball for you right here. So I'm playing against Michael Chang, who I've played a lot in my career. We first played when we were teenagers. That's going to be a tricky match. Michael is tough. He's fit. He's very fast.
Well, that hasn't changed over the
Nothing's
decades, has it?
changed. I'm going to have to play well. But if I'm serving well, I think I'm going to win that match up a break. I'm going to call that match 7-5 or 6-4 for me.
I like it.
Now, the McEnroe and Lindell match will be interesting because Lindell coaches Andy Murray. He'll have been in Australia for a month practicing himself down there. Mac doesn't come to Australia. So that's going to be interesting to see how those guys shape up. I would give Mac the edge because Mac has been playing more than Lindell. I think Mac will win that match. But in last year's tour, Lindell did clip him in one match. So, but I'm going to go with Johnny Mac. I'm going to call that one 6-4 or 6-3.
Okay.
Maybe one break depending on who serves first.
And the big finals match that night.
Me versus Johnny Mac, it's a bagel. 6-0. I'm going to crush him. It's going to be a beatdown. John, you heard it here first. Hope you got this link. If not, I'm emailing it to you.
That's awesome. Jim Courier, it was great to meet you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being with me.
The Champions Cup coming to Oklahoma City February 6th, the Chesapeake Energy Arena. Here's some ticket information for you. You can go to powersharesseries.com and or chesapeakearena.com. All Ticketmaster outlets, including those participating Homeland stores, or by calling 800-745-3000.